tides of escape. The rhythmic clicking of Nora Jensen's heels against the bus station floor matched her racing heartbeat. Rain pelted the wide windows as she clutched her hastily packed duffel bag, wondering if she'd finally lost her mind. 29 years old, and here she was, running away like a teenager. "Last call for Harborview," announced a bored voice over the intercom. Nora had never heard of Harborview until 2 hours ago, when she'd frantically searched for peaceful coastal towns on her phone while hiding in a cafe bathroom. Now it represented the one thing she desperately needed: distance. Vincent's voice still echoed in her head from their encounter earlier that evening. "You look tired, Nora," he'd said with that familiar smile that once made her feel special but now just made her skin crawl. "You know you can always come home. I've kept your key." Their relationship had been over for 3 months, but in Meadowbrook, a town of barely 15,000 people, there was no real ending. Every street corner held a memory, every mutual friend a potential messenger. Vincent Pierce, with his architect firm downtown and his family's deep roots in the community, was inescapable. "Ma'am, are you boarding?" The driver's question jolted her back to reality. "Yes. Sorry." Nora handed over her ticket and climbed aboard, choosing a seat near the back, away from the few other passengers. As the bus pulled away, she watched the familiar buildings fade into the rainy darkness, exhaling for what felt like the first time in months. The journey to Harborview took nearly 5 hours. Nora drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams tangled with memories of how she'd slowly disappeared inside her relationship with Vincent. How her vibrant event planning business had dwindled as she focused on his needs. How her friends had slowly stopped calling after one too many canceled plans. How his subtle criticisms had become the voice in her head. When she finally stepped off the bus, Harborview greeted her with howling wind and sheets of rain that instantly soaked through her light jacket. The small station was nearly deserted at this late hour, with only a sleepy attendant who informed her that the nearest hotel was a mile up the main road. "Is there anywhere closer?" Nora asked, shivering as water dripped down her neck. "Town's pretty quiet this time of year," the attendant said, not unkindly. "Most shops close early, especially in weather like this. You might try Winter's Books down on Harbor Street. Theo sometimes stays open late." Nora nodded her thanks and ventured into the storm, following the attendant's vague directions. The wind whipped her chestnut hair across her face as she struggled with her bag, questioning every decision that had led her here. The quaint streets, which probably charmed tourists during summer months, now felt abandoned and unwelcoming. Just as her fingers began to numb from the cold, she spotted a warm glow spilling onto the wet pavement. "Winter's Books and Tea," read a weathered wooden sign swinging violently in the wind. Through the fogged windows, Nora could make out bookshelves and what appeared to be a small seating area. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door, triggering a gentle bell. The warmth hit her immediately, along with the comforting scent of old books and cinnamon. A man looked up from behind the counter, his expression shifting from surprise to concern as he took in her drenched appearance. "We're actually closing." "But," he began, then stopped himself as Nora's shoulders sagged. "Are you all right?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, water pooling around her feet. "I just got into town and there's nowhere to go." "And the storm?" "Stay right there," he said, disappearing through a doorway behind the counter. Nora stood frozen, unsure if she should leave, when he returned with a thick towel and a steaming mug. "I'm Theo," he said, offering both items with a quiet steadiness that made her want to cry. "And I think you might need these more than I need to close on time." Pages between us, the morning light filtered through the small apartment above Winter's Books and Tea, gently waking Nora from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was, until the unfamiliar quilt and the sound of waves crashing against the shore brought yesterday's impulsive escape flooding back. Theo had insisted she take his spare room after learning she had nowhere to go. "It's nothing fancy," he'd said, leading her upstairs. "But it's dry and the view makes up for the simplicity." He hadn't asked questions, hadn't demanded explanations, just offered shelter with a quiet dignity that had nearly broken through her carefully constructed walls. Now, wrapped in borrowed warmth, Nora gazed out the window at Harborview's coastline. Fishing boats bobbed in the distance, and seagulls wheeled against the clearing sky. The storm had passed, but she wasn't ready to leave this unexpected sanctuary. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "There's coffee downstairs when you're ready," Theo called through the door. "No rush." 20 minutes later, Nora descended the narrow staircase to find the bookshop already open. A few early customers browsed the shelves while Theo arranged a display of local authors near the front window. He looked up when she appeared, offering a smile that crinkled the corners of his gray-blue eyes. "Sleep okay?" he asked, passing her a steaming mug. "Better than I have in ages," she admitted, wrapping her fingers around the warmth. "Thank you for everything," Theo shrugged, returning to his work. Sometimes we all need a safe harbor. As Nora sipped her coffee, she studied her reluctant host. Theo Winters appeared to be in his mid-30s, with dark hair threaded with premature silver at the temples. His movements were deliberate, his manner reserved but not unfriendly. There was a solidity to him that felt grounding after months of walking on emotional eggshells with Vincent. "I should find a hotel today," she said, though the thought of leaving made her inexplicably anxious. Theo glanced up from the books he was arranging. "The Lighthouse Inn is decent, but they're hosting a fishing tournament this weekend. Might be full." He hesitated, then added, "The spare room is yours for as long as you need it. No strings. I can't impose—" "Actually," he interrupted, gesturing around the shop, "I could use some help here if you're willing. Consider it room and board." His eyes met hers briefly before darting away. "The place could use a fresh perspective. I've been told I'm too set in my ways." Nora looked around the charming but slightly chaotic space. Books overflowed their shelves. Categorization systems seemed to shift arbitrarily from section to section. And the small cafe area was functional but uninviting. "I'm an event planner," she found herself saying. Or I was. Organization is kind of my thing. For the first time, Theo's smile reached his eyes. Then we might have the perfect arrangement. Over the next week, Nora threw herself into revitalizing Winter's books and tea. She reorganized shelves, created inviting reading nooks, and transformed the cafe corner with fairy lights and comfortable chairs salvaged from Theo's storage room. Working with her hands kept her mind occupied, preventing the spiral of self-doubt that had become her constant companion. Theo watched her transformation of his shop with a mixture of amazement and amusement. "You're a force of nature," he remarked one evening as they shared takeout after closing. "I haven't seen the place look this good since—" He trailed off, and Nora caught a flash of something in his expression, a shadow of old pain quickly masked. "Since when?" she asked gently. Theo toyed with his food. "Since Audrey was here. My fiancé," he swallowed hard. "Ex-fiancé, I suppose, though that doesn't quite capture it." Nora waited, sensing he rarely spoke of this. "She died," he finally said. 4 years ago. Car accident on the coastal highway during a storm." His voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened around his chopsticks. "She loved this place. Had all these ideas for it. After she was gone, I just maintained, existed, kept the lights on." The weight of his loss filled the room, and Nora reached across the table to touch his hand briefly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, understanding now why he'd been so quick to offer shelter to a storm-drenched stranger. Theo nodded, seeming both uncomfortable with and grateful for the connection. "What about you?" he asked. "What brought you to Harborview with nothing but a duffel bag and no plan?" Nora tensed, her reflexive deflection ready on her lips. But something about Theo's honesty, his willingness to share his pain, made her pause. "I was running away," she admitted, "from an ex who doesn't understand what ex means. From a town where I can't breathe without bumping into our history. From the person I became when I was with him. And who was that? Someone small," she said quietly. "Someone who constantly apologized for taking up space. Someone who measured every word, every decision, every outfit against what might upset him least." She stared into her tea, surprised at her own candor. "I woke up one day and didn't recognize myself anymore." Theo nodded slowly. And now? Nora looked around at the transformation they'd created together, at the way the bookshop now reflected both his steady foundation and her revitalizing touch. Now, she said, I think I'm starting to remember. As customers discovered the newly invigorated bookshop, business steadily improved. Nora suggested hosting evening events, poetry readings, book clubs, acoustic music nights that drew locals and breathed new life into the space. Working alongside Theo, she found herself laughing again, expressing opinions without bracing for criticism, making decisions without second-guessing every choice. One rainy afternoon, as they shelved a new shipment together, their hands brushed, reaching for the same book. The simple contact sent an unexpected current through Nora, and she found herself looking up into Theo's eyes, suddenly aware of how close they stood. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Theo gently pulled away, clearing his throat. I think we need more shelf space, he said, his voice slightly rougher than usual. But that evening, as they closed up shop together, Nora caught him watching her with an expression that mirrored her own confused emotions, a mixture of cautious hope and lingering fear, the tentative possibility that sometimes broken pieces could find a way to fit together again.